All right, so I guess we'll get started here. So, hi everyone, my name is Adrian. Thank you for joining us for our second episode in the Outside In series. We're really excited to have Akuna here tonight, along with Alex from Merrell. Tonight's episode is actually benefiting Luke Nola. So I want to thank all of you who have already made a donation direct to their website or when you registered on Eventbrite. It's a truly awesome organization that's helping empower youth to get outdoors, and we really appreciate the support. So any way you can help there is really, really appreciated. Akuna will definitely speak more to the organization later on the chat. But if you have any questions, again, for Akuna or for Alex throughout the call, feel free to drop them in the chat box at any time, regardless of kind of what we're talking to. We'll kind of keep an eye on everything, and we'll try to get through them all by the end of it. Before we get started too, I also want to mention that next week we'll be hosting Cannondale athletes Ted and Laura King. So if you want to learn more about gravel riding and their journey, definitely take a moment to check out our Eventbrite page later. But jumping back into tonight, for those of you who aren't familiar with Akuna, he's the first African-American to thru-hike the Triple Crown. All throughout becoming an incredible mentor and inspiration in the process. So it's an amazing, feat in itself. It's absolutely incredible. To break it down for you guys, for those of you who don't know what the Triple Crown is, it essentially includes the Pacific Crest Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Appalachian Trail. Altogether, that's close to 8,000 miles of terrain. So it's no easy feat. It truly is an incredible challenge. So props to you, Akuna. But yeah, without further ado, welcome, Akuna. Thank you for being here tonight. It's a pleasure.
Oh man, thank you for having me. First though, I had to give some props out there. I'm actually the first African-American male to Triple Crown. The first African-American is an awesome lady named Elsie Walker. She goes by Chardonnay. She completed it a year before I did. So she completed in 2018. Didn't get a lot of fanfare, didn't get a lot of attention, but I like to make sure everybody knows that she was the first African-American, period. I think that was a huge accomplishment and it needs to be recognized.
No, definitely, that's incredible. I appreciate you kind of bringing that up because obviously we live in a time now where appreciation doesn't go where it's deserved. So it's nice to kind of have that spotlight there. Thank you.
No problem, no problem.
I guess we'll start off by asking you what inspired you to take on this challenge? How did this journey begin for you?
Wow, I started hiking in 2016 to help myself with PTSD. I had no outdoor background, no hiking background, anything like that. I just read about the Pacific Crest Trail while I was stationed in Iraq in 2003. And in 16, I saw the movie Wild and it reminded me of this trail. Did some quick Google research, found out that it was the same trail, that people still thru-hiked it. And I went out because I thought that's what I needed to get my life back in track. And I kind of fell in love with it in 16. And the goal was never the Triple Crown. I actually didn't even know there was other long distance trails in America. I only knew of the Pacific Crest Trail. I learned about the others while I was on the PCT. And in 16, I actually didn't complete because I dislocated my knee on Mount Whitney. But I came out in 17 and I completed that year and I enjoyed it so much. And so many people were contacting me, telling me how my story was helping them or how it was inspiring them to get out and hike. And I decided, you know what, I still need some more healing. So I went ahead and jumped on the Appalachian Trail in 2018. And, on that trail, I built up my leadership skills again and I felt more of myself coming back. And it just turns out that more and more people were contacting me, like veterans, BIPOC, just like, hey, watching your story is getting me in the outdoors and it's been helping me so much. Thank you for sharing. So I decided that, I'm helping people and I'm helping myself. So why not just keep this thing going? And went out to hike the Continental Divide Trail last year, finishing the Triple Crown.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I know we talked about this earlier with Alex, but how do you feel also like in the times of COVID, like how have you been affected by that? How's your community been affected by that? Like, what are you doing now to sort of, get around this?
Mainly what I'm doing is I'm trying to recreate responsibly when I can. You know, I had a big through hike plan this year, the North Country Trail, which is 4,600 miles from North Dakota to New York. I think only 4 people have ever done it in one season. But I thought it would be pretty irresponsible of myself to travel from my home in New Orleans all the way there, risk exposure, and then bringing it to real small communities who don't have the resources to fight it. So I canceled that hike. I had the Arizona Trail hike planned for later this year. That's looking like that's going to be canceled also. And I'm just recreating responsibly local, you know, spending a lot of time in the bayou, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, but, you know, it's the thing to do right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what do you feel like is, you know, in a perfect world, hopefully we get through this really soon. Is that going to be your next sort of challenge there? What do you have sort of planned beyond that?
You know, when I canceled my hikes for this year, I basically just postponed it the next year because I really want to hike the North Country Trail. I mean, it's a lot of the country that I've never spent a lot of time at, and it's a trail that doesn't get a lot of exposure. Not a lot of people actually go and enjoy that area unless they live locally. And you know, places like Michigan's Upper Peninsula, I've wanted to see that forever. And if I can hike through it, even better.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So what's your favorite part, sort of like when you're going through, I guess, I mean, obviously you've been exposed to so many different trails all across the United States. Have you gone abroad with that as well, or just kind of, you know, dedicated here?
It's been all in the U.S. so far hiking. I was actually born overseas. I was born in Germany, so I lived all around Europe growing up, and then I spent time in Korea, a little bit in Japan. So already saw most of the world. You know, the U.S. was the place that was like this new thing for me. So I've been concentrating mainly on the U.S. Hopefully, 2022 though, I'll be going out to New Zealand and hiking their long trail, the Te Ora.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I've always wanted to go to New Zealand personally.
You know, I gotta see it. Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. Can't miss that. Come on.
I guess from, I mean, when we think like at Sports Basement, obviously a lot of our initiatives are kind of on, you know, not just building the community, but also sustainability. I guess this is kind of like a really broad question, but what have you learned sort of like on on the trails, like out there? What have you felt like is really like a huge impact on these things and little things that we can all do to sort of take care of our local areas, our local trails?
You know, I think for me personally, it's one of the things I do to try to make an impact is I pick up other people's trash. You know, I try to educate people on leave no trace policies. And I learned a lot of times when you meet people and they're not, you know, taking care of it, they don't know leave no trace policies. Even though a lot of times at a trailhead, they're posted right there, but a lot of people don't pay attention to that. And, you know, all of us at times need that swift kick in the butt to do the right thing. And so I try to make sure I do that. And I also try to make sure I can provide that initial introduction to the outdoors for some people in my community who never really went to the outdoors. Because ultimately, to sustain the outdoors, to take care of our national parks, our forests, we need people to actually care about this nature that we love so much. And the more of us that cares, the more of us that are available to take care of it. So I try to make sure I can get as anybody I can kicking and screaming. I don't care. Come on a hike with me. You know, you got to make that connection to nature.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's really important. So I definitely want to welcome, I've got questions and I know you guys do too. So I definitely want to welcome you guys to ask them. Akuna is here. He's an amazing resource. So if you guys are curious about anything that's going on, you know, across the United States, when it comes to these trails, definitely feel free. This is your time.
I've got a question, Adrian. Akuna, what's the probably the biggest challenge prepping for these big trips? Like, what's the biggest kind of area of entry, or just trying to how you're preparing for these?
You know, the information for the big three is pretty much everywhere online because, you know, you have thousands of people that hike them every year. I think the biggest problem is trying to weed through all of this information and find the information that works right for you. I mean, something as simple as a gear list. You know, you can go out and copy gear lists from hundreds and hundreds of people, and all of that stuff may not work for you. Just because it worked for this person doesn't mean it's one size fits all. Same thing with resupply lists. Like myself, I really don't like to send packages. I like to stop in the communities, you know, spread my a little money, meet the locals, and buy things as I go. I mean, your appetite changes as you move around the trail, so you don't want to eat the same things. Plus, it's a good way to learn more about the areas you're in. But if you just go off of all these gear lists and all this information online, you end up with someone else's experience. So I think the hardest thing to do is just weeding through and making the hike your hike.
And we have a question from Ernest. So he says, the movie Wild opens with a graphic scene of ripping a toenail wide open. How would you open your movie, and who would you want to play with you, to play you?
Oh man, I think my movie would probably have to start the first night on the PCT, you know, after coming in and feeling great about yourself, putting up the tent, you know, seeing other hikers and trying to play it off. But as soon as you can't see anybody, just in a fetal position, little tear here or there, just shaking like, what in the world did I get myself into? And I kind of think Michael B. Jordan would probably have to play it, Killmonger from Black Panther.
Nice, good choice. And question from Sally: what were the things you brought with you that you regret bringing along?
Oh, my first hike. Okay, my first hike. I think I never really weighed my pack, so I don't know how much it weighs. I kind of one of those bring what you feel type people. Whatever's gonna make your trip enjoyable. But I could have did without like 4 water filters. You know, I brought many of those thinking, hey, if one breaks, I want to still be able to drink water. Like I'm never going to see a town again to be able to buy another one, or Amazon doesn't exist on trail in nature or something. So I brought a whole bunch of those. And my first tent, I didn't know they made gear for camping and then gear for backpacking. So my first tent was easily over 8.5 pounds, and that was just breaking my back. I carried it for about 400 miles. I would see all the little tiny ultralight tents, and it's like, okay, I guess that's some of that bad information I was talking about earlier, trying to find the right stuff for you. So I carried it all the way to Hiker Heaven, which was 434 miles on the PCT, and finally got rid of it.
All right. And then from Herender, any wildlife encounters on the Big Three, and which one was your favorite?
Lots of wildlife encounters. Uh, you know, SoCal, you can't go anywhere with SoCal without seeing rattlesnakes. And the further north you get toward the Mojave Desert, you start seeing those Mojave green rattlesnakes, and they're more aggressive. I had a day where I was hiking and I wasn't feeling good and I was kind of out of it, and stepped right on a Mojave green rattlesnake and popped right off of it just as quick. I turn around, I look at the snake. It's not coming at me. It's not acting aggressive. It's not even striking. It kind of just looked at me, gave me the what's up, and just kept about his business. It was like, wow, you know, I need to be paying more attention. I can't be hiking anymore when I'm not feeling well. But I've seen everything from, you know, bear on the Continental Divide Trail around Yellowstone, and I've seen some around Lassen National Park. But I think the one that was most majestic for me was in Colorado this past year. You know, me and my hiking partner, Undecided, we stopped at a lake, and, you know, we were just hanging out talking about how we've hiked almost 3 trails and never seen a moose. And just out of nowhere, this moose just comes over the hillside. It's maybe 20 feet from us, just looks at us, minds his own business, takes a couple of sips from the lake, and just disappears just as magical it came in. I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And then a fitness question from Richard. Did you train prior to the hike or get fit as you went along?
You know, in Louisiana, I don't have a lot of access to trails. The trails I do have are usually, you know, no longer than 4 miles round trip. So what I do is I urban hike. You know, I put on my backpack and I hike town. I walk through the neighborhoods. You know, I walk to do my errands. I need to go grocery shopping. I take an empty backpack, walk to my local grocery store or Walmart, fill up my pack, walk home. If I need to go pay utility bills or go mail something from the post office, I do the same. And so I basically turned my entire community into my training ground. And, you know, I slow with miles, maybe 4 or 5 miles to start, and then I kind of ramp it up the closer I get to hiking season. You know, with these knees I have, patella tracking disorders, I don't want to go too hard in training. So it's just a slow increase until it's time to go.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip. I mean, people don't realize that, you know, every single one of your little walks is an opportunity to sort of build up to something greater.
Definitely. And, you know, your community looks so much different when you're going 2 miles an hour than it does when you're driving 45 miles an hour. You know, you get the opportunity to meet people or see that great local donut shop that you didn't even know was there. So, you know, I think that's where a few of the extra pounds have come from right now is I've been finding too much great local stuff walking around the neighborhood. But, you know, hey, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. You got to reward yourself with little things.
Definitely. You know, this is going to hold me over when I'm in the middle of nowhere with nothing but peanut butter crackers and a half-empty jar of Nutella, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. So we have another question from Denise. Do you think these hikes are best done solo or with others?
You know, I think you can do them either way. All of the hikes, except for the last one, I started solo. But, you know, when you're on these trails, you don't have to be solo unless you just want to. You know, you're going to have a community. You're going to have a trail family. And then on top of your trail family, you're going to have a bubble with, you know, trail cousins and trail aunties and maybe that trail uncle you wish you couldn't tell anybody you were related to. But you're going to meet all of these people. It's just during the day when you need that time to work on you, you usually hike staggered. So even last season, me and Undecided started together. But most of the day we would hike alone. So if I needed to work through some things, I had nothing but time and space to do that. And then when I wanted company, you know, it's like, hey, we catch up, we hike together. And that's pretty much how it is on all of the trails.
When you've been on one of those trips, have you hiked sort of, you know, kind of split that together with someone where you guys would like camp out at the same spot sort of along the trail, or was it kind of always just stop and go?
You know, mainly what we would do is say, once you meet people that you want to hike with, matching pace is really, really hard to do. You can meet some good people out there and you just hike at different speeds. So, you know, we would just talk the night before and say, hey, how far do you think you want to go tomorrow? If somebody is saying 20 miles and I'm going to shoot for this spring, so then you could kind of go at your own pace. But me, once I call you family, you know, I'm trying to make sure we're all okay. It might be the soldier in me, it might be the way my family raised me. So usually I'm out in front, I hike fast, don't know why, I just always do. But after every 5 miles, I will stop and wait for every person to catch up just to make sure everybody's okay. You know, it's everybody good, everybody has water, nobody's hurt. And it's kind of cool because you get to hear about their day. You know, if you're 30 minutes ahead of them, you may not have the opportunity to see that bear and those bear cubs because you passed them before they even came through. So it's always cool because you're always getting a story through a section that's completely different than yours.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. And you might give them a tip that'll actually get them through the entire trip too. So that's
Definitely.
And then we have a question from Sally. Would you change the order of accomplishing the trials? If so, why? And if not, why not?
You know, I've thought about this one before, and I kind of think I possibly, if I did change them, I like the order I went, but if I changed them at all, I think I would have did the Appalachian Trail last. And only because, you know, the other two were longer, but for me, the Appalachian Trail was harder mentally to stay on the trail. You know, you're wet all the time. You have these straight up and downs. You know, the West Coast, you have these pretty switchbacks. The East Coast is like, nah, none of that. You're going to work for every climb. But, you know, when you're going through all of that and you're getting overcast views, so you don't get to see anything, you're wet, all your gear smells like mildew, and there's a road that will lead to a town that you can pass 3 to 4 times a day, it made it really, really, really tough to stay on trail. I think the people I was hiking with at the time were the only reason I was able to stick it out. So I think I would have switched those two, because if I did the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide Trail, doesn't matter how wet and mildewy my stuff was, I was going to finish day 18.
So I guess sort of piggybacking off of that, especially because, you know, you've been through some pretty tough conditions. What would you say the best gear, what was the best gear that you brought? And what are some of the best memories?
My Catabatic Flex 22 is my quilt. I started off in a sleeping bag, feather fins bag, very, very good bag, but never did like the feeling of being constricted at night. So I picked up a quilt, and that is my absolute favorite piece of gear. That paired with a nice inflatable thermarest, love it. You know, after hiking 20 to 25 miles a day, the only thing that I really care at that point about is sleep. You know, and if you can't get that good sleep in, you can't recover. And if you don't recover, you're not going to want to be there. So those are my favorite pieces of gear, you know, my sleep system. Uh, and a best memory. Whew, you know, Undecided may not agree with me, but this is probably one of my best memories was last year on the Continental Divide Trail. You know, we left Leadville, Colorado, and we hiked up to Kokomo Pass. And, you know, we got up there, we kind of took a break, took pictures in front of the sign, you know, that peak celebration. And all of a sudden, dark clouds just came in from everywhere. Temperature drops, you know, we're already in the snow. We're trying to pick up our gear, and then lightning and thunder comes down. We see a little tree in the distance that may give us a little cover. So we head toward that way, and then we start seeing lightning striking around the tree. You know, at this point, we know we have to drop elevation as quick as possible. So we look down, and we can see like what looks like an old abandoned road. So we just head that way, trying to get out of the storm and hopefully not get struck by lightning. We get down here to this road, we're thinking it is abandoned and everything, and then all of a sudden a truck comes through, and we both just kind of looked at each other like, yeah, maybe we're not in the right place. And the guy turns around, he comes back over, and he's like, what are you guys doing here? You're on an active mine site. I was like, ooh. So the security ended up coming, escorting us to the office. The office told us we were trespassing, and if we trespassed again on their property, they would have us arrested. So they let us go at the front gate, which erases the 15 miles we have already done that day because the gate is backwards. So now we have to road walk as far as we can to get off their property, which ended up being almost another 20 miles. We camped in right basically off the highway. We found anything right out the woods that wasn't on their property and kind of just crashed. You know, the next morning we just walked out of the woods crazy, like, and all these people are on the highway. I'm sure they were like, what in the world are these people doing just coming out the side of the road? You know, it was a bad time then, but it's one of my favorite memories. You know, the time we almost got arrested to try to get away from a lightning storm.
Oh man, that's crazy. So I know you said the Appalachian Trail was your most challenging. So which one would you do again?
Without doubt, the Pacific Crest Trail. I would definitely do that 4 or 5 more times.
Yeah. That was
just
unmatched.
You know, it's my first love. It was my first trail, you know, and the vibe on the West Coast is completely different. I mean, each trail is unique, and they're not anywhere near the same, you know, and that's what I had to learn with the ATs, because at first I didn't like it because I kept comparing it to the Pacific Crest Trail. But once I stopped doing that, you can see the beauty that the Appalachian Trail has on its own. But you just can't compare any of them to each other. But the West Coast, the Pacific Crest Trail, it has my heart, always will. I mean, if I can hike it again at 80, I will hike it again at 80.
All right. And question from Sally: what were your favorite foods while hiking?
Wow. My favorite food while hiking, when I'm on trail, I have to have gummy bears. They are my go-to snack. They take me back to my childhood in Germany. I will not leave town at times unless there is at least 2 bags of gummy bears in my pack. If they're not there, I don't want to go anywhere. I will search every store, gas station, or whatever for those gummy bears. They just have to be there, you know. And sometimes I have a monster that kind of goes into the food bag and eats it at night and wakes up with wrappers all over the place. I don't know what that's about, but you know, I gotta have them at least to start. In town, my go-to in town, and I always crave, is milkshakes. You know, it doesn't matter what type of milkshake. It's just something about coming in town and getting a nice milkshake that just puts my mind at ease.
Sounds like a good dinner to me. Gummy bears and a milkshake.
Oh, the best.
So what kind of tent do you use for weekend trips versus longer trips? And definitely, it looks like we have some people that are interested in that quilt. So if you can kind of let us know what the name of that quilt was again, that'd be awesome.
No problem. The quilt is the Catabatic Flex 22. They have a couple of great quilts they sell. I like this one because it opens up and gives me the option to use it as a blanket, or I can zip up the bottom, close up the foot box, and kind of make it like a mummy bag for when it's colder. So it's my go-to quilt. You know, absolutely love it. Wouldn't trade it in for anything. Uh, what type of tent do I use right now? I've been using a Z-Pax Duplex this last trail on the CDT, and that's currently what I'm still using. You know, when you invest the $500 or $600 for that tent, you want to use it until it falls apart, basically. So I'm using that right now, but I'm really getting into Six Moon Designs has a new tent called the Haven, and really loving the way it looks. It's a double wall tent, you know, versus the single wall of a duplex that collects all the moisture. So this one should vent a lot more. It's not Dyneema, which is what Dyneema is waterproof, but it's thin, it's easy to tear up. So this one would be a little more durable, and still comes in about 2 pounds, 2 ounces. So it's perfect for long distance hiking.
Awesome, good tips. And then it looks like we have a question here from Bryce. So what's your favorite section of a trail from any of the big three?
You know, any through hiker that hears me say this will think I'm losing it, but I love the desert sections of every trail that I've been on. The Pacific Crest Trail and the CDT, you get desert sections, and those are some of my favorite. You know, most people, I love being up in the high Sierra, you know, being in the mountains and in the snow, but I don't like to be cold. You know, I'm from Louisiana. Give me 100-degree temperatures and I'm all right. You give me anything below 50 and I will whine all day about being cold. Tuna doesn't like to be cold. You know, I'll do what I gotta do. I just won't like it. But you know, the deserts is just, there's so much life in the desert that you don't expect to see. You know, there's so many colors, there's so many flowers. You know, I love the little lizards that like to hike along you. You know, they run up a little bit, they wait for you to catch up, and then yeah, run some more. You know, I will admit I probably had many conversations with those little guys, you know, but just don't tell anybody. But yeah, the deserts, I love them. New Mexico desert, absolutely gorgeous. And that leads right into the Gila. Now, across the Gila a couple hundred times, you're soaking wet, but it's so gorgeous down there.
Yeah, I know this sort of loops into kind of what Luke Nola does. So a question from April is, in the beginning, did you have any apprehension hiking because of being African American? Have you encountered anyone who questioned your presence? And how did you handle the situation?
Definitely was an object of concern when I first started hiking. I think more so for family members and friends. You know, I was more of a person where it's like, you know, I grew up all around the world. I've done all kind of things. If I want to do something, I'm just going to do it. And if somebody doesn't want me there, we'll tackle that as we get to it. So I did have some concerns, but it wasn't going to stop me one way or another. I was going to have to get out there and see it for myself. You know, I have ran into people at times that want to do the stairs like, hey, it's a black man. Oh my goodness. You know, I have run into people that have vocalized the fact that they didn't want me out there. You know, I've had people threaten to damage my gear. I mean, it comes up, but you know, I guess probably because I'm a little older now, I don't have the need to just run off at the mouth right away. You know, I'm more laid back with it. I have an understanding that, you know, a lot of the people that I've encountered that had some type of issue had never really had experience with a black person in the outdoors. So, you know, however the interaction goes between me and that person, that's how they judge the person that's coming up behind me. So I try to make sure that I lay the foundation for other African American hikers, for other hikers of colors, for for also women that's coming up behind me. And you know, it's a fine balance. You know, you want to be polite, you want to lay the foundation, but at the same time, you don't want to be walked all over. So you just kind of have to find that mix. You know, it can be difficult at times, but it's what we got to do. I mean, we don't get anywhere by just cursing at each other or yelling at each other. You know, we get somewhere by having discussions. And at times they don't want to have the discussions, and that's fine. You know, I give them a little kindness, and I think they don't like that more than anything. So still, I win.
Yeah, and like you said, that sort of exposure is a big barrier to entry for youth, especially. So, a question from Haley would be, what would you tell PIPOC youth who have dreams of getting out there to hike but don't have access to nature outside their neighborhoods?
You know, hiking can start just even in an urban setting. You know, you can start hiking by hiking around your neighborhood. You know, I mean, hiking is essentially walking with some gear on your back. You can do that pretty much anywhere. And then, like for myself, also, you know, I start off in the neighborhoods, and as the access gets better, I can go to places like City Park in New Orleans. And, you know, coming up as a kid there, that's where I saw the most grass anywhere in the city. So, you know, we could catch the bus and we go to City Park, and we would, you know, walk around, hang out there. And I still do that now. I'll go hike around City Park and get some miles in, which is actually cool too, because Loop Nola is there. So, you know, you can get away to City Park, you can go check in with Loop Nola. But, you know, I think one of the best things too about this generation is we have Google. You know, we have the ability to research. You know, so if a young person wants to get into hiking, they've been in their neighborhoods, they've got in the miles, they've learned how to set up their gear and everything, they backyard camp. When you want to do more, all you have to do is research. And almost every major city now has some type of youth program to get people in the outdoors. I mean, it may not be hiking right away, but it might be something where you evolve to that within the program. You know, they may have a day where they teach you how to set up camps and, you know, safety in the outdoors and leave no trace practices, and then eventually getting up to a hike, and then from there overnight or a camp. And it's something I wish we had more of when I was younger. If so, if I would have got that introduction to the outdoors earlier, and I wouldn't have started hiking when I was 35.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad a lot of those youth programs are popping up because I feel like they truly are making a difference. I mean, organizations like Loop Nola are doing amazing things already.
Definitely, definitely. And it seems like more and more are popping up all over the country. And that's what we need. We need this next generation to have this, you know, this contact with nature, this attachment, this introduction. Because, you know, when we're all gone, it's on them to take care of it and preserve it for the next generation. And if they don't have that connection with it, they're not going to care. So, I mean, the earlier we can do that, the better. And especially for kids that live in the cities, they need to know that there's more out there. You know, I mean, I have kids back home in New Orleans that have seen me, you know, on a magazine or on the news, and they tell me things like, you know, I didn't know there was more out there than just what's in my neighborhood. And a lot of times their neighborhoods is full of a lot of foolishness. So just them knowing that there's another person out there that looks like the guy across the street with his dreadlocks and tattoos, but he's living his life differently, it gives them that option.
No, definitely. And you're a huge inspiration, honestly. Uh, so a question from Sally, actually. So when you were in the rain, so harsh conditions, did you ever set up a tent, or more importantly, I guess, did you ever skip that and just stayed at a motel or something similar?
You know, if I'm in town and the rain is actually on its way, we may decide to take a 0 day, you know, just a complete day off so we can avoid it. Other times you just can't avoid it. You end up setting up in the rain, you know, getting things wet in the inside if you can't, you know, keep it dry while you're putting up. You know, you deal with the wet sleeping bags at times, the wet gear. You hope for sun the next day so you can stop somewhere and just lay everything out and dry it. But it's the inevitable. I mean, you're going to deal with it, especially on the Appalachian Trail, unless you're lucky enough to be near a hostel. And at times the rain can be bad where all our gear is wet, everything is just soaked, morale is just bottomed out. Sometimes you just have to beeline to the next town or the next hostel, dry everything out, have a warm meal, and it just boosts the morale back up so you can get the next few miles in.
And a question from Nan, what mistakes would you try not to repeat? And also a question from Sally, did you have a nickname while you were on the trail?
Ah, I'll take that first. My nickname actually is Akuna. My real name is Will, but most people don't use it anymore. Akuna is short for Akuna Matata. You know, my first season on trail, people would ask me things like, so what are you going to do as far as the dry spot, it's like, I'm not going to worry about that. We'll figure it out. You know, what about weather in the Sierras? It's like we have 702 miles to worry about. I'm not worrying about it. We'll figure it out when we get there. And this just went on and on and on and on and on until someone started calling me No Worries, which turned into Akuna Matata, and now it's Akuna. You know, so that was the second part of the question. I'm trying to find, what was the first part again?
Oh yeah, is it, if there were any mistakes that you want to try not to repeat?
Ooh, you know, generally my mistakes were good points where I would just laugh at myself. So I think I'm cool with repeating them again. You know, I mean, yeah, sometimes I think I probably would have started my first trail with the Gut Hooks app and actually figured out how to use it before I got out there. That might have helped, you know, those wrong turns that went 4 or 5 miles. But even those, they were good learning lessons. And I'm good for just sitting down in the middle of the trail and having a good laugh at my own expense. I mean, sometimes it's just what you need, just to laugh at the mistakes.
Yeah, and I know this kind of, I mean, earlier you spoke about how you started hiking to deal with your PTSD. So a question from Ina here is, the post-hike blues can be rough, especially after your first long distance hike. Did you experience post-hike blues? And if so, how did you cope off the trail?
Uh, Post-hike depression is a real thing. I know many people deal with it. I've dealt with it in forms more so this year. You know, all the other years, it was a lot easier because once I got off the trails, I was instantly planning the next hike. So I could kind of just immerse myself in all the research and the studying I needed to do. So I didn't even have to think about it. And before I knew it, hiking season was here. But this year with COVID and canceling everything, this is the first year I haven't been on a long distance hike and since 2016. I mean, I haven't been home around this time of year since 2015. So it was been depressing, especially when you look at your pictures and you see some of the awesome things you did, and it can get me down. But at the same time, seeing some of those pictures bring me right back to that point, and you know, that happy memory, and I have to smile, I have to laugh, you know, or contact that member of my trail family that I was with that day and be like, hey, you remember that day you built a beaver dam because you think it was going to rain, you know, and have that joke, have that laugh. And I've actually, you know, been happy because I've been able to spend more time with family. You know, once the post trail, I'm not on this adventure, you know, staying started to fade away. I started seeing all the other things that were around me. You know, I hadn't been around, say, for like my father's birthday since 2015. So it was great celebrating with him, his 66 this year. You know, I was able to virtually see my nephew graduate high school since they couldn't do the regular graduation. But these are things you miss when you're hiking. You know, you don't even think of when you're going through the depression. But as you start to come out of it and you start looking around, you see there's all kind of other things out here to, you know, just keep you going. And when you need that trail, I go out to the bayou and I get my miles in and I come on back and I feel good.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's good to have that outlet. And I guess this is a really good transition. Alex from Merrell is obviously here. And now we want to kind of shift the conversation towards, I mean, you've already talked about a lot of your favorite gear. The quilt is definitely the go-to piece, it seems. So when it comes to, you know, the brands that are recognizing pioneers like you and sending gear, what brands have supported you? Who would you want to recognize? And kind of as we head into the whole like conversation with Alex and Merrell, more specifically, like what are your favorite shoes? What are your go-tos?
Oh man, go-tos. I pretty much love everything that Merrell makes. You know, I have a giant size 15, and there are so many things that aren't made to fit my feet, and if they do, they're not comfortable. But pretty much everything I've worn from Merrell has been incredible. But my favorite shoes to hike in is the MQM Flex, the one or the twos. Absolutely love them. I have a pair on right now. Usually my everyday shoe is the Nova. You cannot beat the Nova for comfort. I mean, that thing is like wrapping your foot in a pillow and just rocking it all day long, you know? So that's my go-to all day, everyday shoe. And then I really like the Ultralight also. I mean, the Ultralight and the MQM Flex seems like they're just built for all terrain. You know, when I needed a road walk, they were comfortable, held up to it. When I was in the snow, everything was great. Traction was good. In the desert, So, I mean, I threw everything at those two shoes, and the ultralights and the MQ Flexes go to for long distance trails for me.
Akuna, how often are you switching out shoes? How many miles are you kind of like? How many pairs in a hike are
Um,
you going?
Honestly, I think I've switched them out a little too early, you know, since I have a few friends at Merrell, you know, sometimes they want me to try some things out. So the shoes may be able to go further, but generally I can easily get 600 miles per shoe, per pair. But if I wanted to push it, say the ultralights, I actually tested the ultralights on the CDT last year. And I went 750 miles in those all the way to the end. And I actually still have those and I still wear them from time to time. And I still have good tread on them, good traction, which is very surprising to me because a lot of the other shoes that I was using prior to Merrell, if you got 200 or 300 miles in there before the toes started peeling apart, you were doing good.
And with you know, one of the questions that came through was about between sneakers and boots. I know that's kind of a big choice when it comes to through hiking, kind of what you're looking to wear.
Yeah.
And you know, from the products you're describing are kind of right in that sweet spot of that in between, the hybrid shoe between sneaker and boot. Have you kind of
Definitely.
gone both ends of the spectrum, and you know, how do you arrive at that decision with footwear?
You know, when I first started hiking on the PCT, I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I pronounced it Merrell. And that was my first trail shoe. It was actually the Moabs. And I'm sure if you spent time on trail, you're familiar with the Moabs. Well put together boot, quality shoes, so comfortable, durable. But, you know, as time went on for me on my first year, I saw a lot of other lighter options that people were using. Primarily then it was a Trail Runner by another company. And so at 17, I decided I wanted to try those, you know, because it's something that was lighter, it'd be easier on my knees. And I wore them and I got through the whole season with them, but I absolutely hated them. You know, having to glue them together after 100 miles and then glue them together the next town and then the next town, it was just too much. And on the AT, when I was contacted about possibly being an ambassador for Merrell, I never knew there was anything other than the Moab from Merrell. I went on the website, I looked at everything there, and it's like they have things in between a boot, they have things in between, you know, just a straight up barefoot trail runner. And I asked to get a pair of those, and that was the Agility Synthesis Flex, which is the first trail runner style shoe I've ever used for Merrell, and absolutely loved it. You know, it was just that middle ground. I finally felt like someone made a shoe for hiking that wasn't a boot. You know, prior to that, it was a running shoe that you just made hiking, or it was a more built up boot. But that was the first time I saw something that was in the middle. I mean, for a novice person, I would definitely go with the more ankle support that comes with the Merrell Moabs. And then as you get your ankles a little stronger, you can tail down to some of the lighter options. Or, you know, I mean, I wish I would have known then that some of the trail runners actually come in high top styles, like the ultralights. So I could get to the ankle support with that feeling of more of a, say, of a tennis shoe. And, you know, I think that's also a good place to start for a lot of people. But it's just a natural progression. You know, as your ankles get stronger, you can eliminate the high top style boots and go to a lower thing if the terrain allows. Now, if you're somewhere like Pennsylvania, you may want to wear boots all the time, because if you ever been out there, they have rocks that are like this big with spikes on the top that go right through everything. So you want those overbuilt, more boot styles for that type of terrain. So, you know, look at your terrain and also your comfort zone, and you can figure out where you start from, say, Moab down to a trail runner.
So one of the things, you know, anybody that does, you know, long distance hiking and things like that, you know, one of the biggest things that can ruin your day pretty quickly is kind of foot care and how you're taking care of your feet. How have you kind of experienced that? Have you been pretty lucky with that, or have you
You
had
know,
rough issues as you've gone, or different trails?
Uncle Sam gave me a parting gift from the military. My feet are absolutely destroyed from combat boots. So they don't swell. I don't get blisters, nothing. I mean, if you can wear combat boots for 4 or 5 years, nothing will mess up your feet after that.
Yeah, that's that's pretty. Not everybody has that.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, you're right though. I mean, I've seen many of people have to leave a long distance trail because they have these horrible blisters, and a lot don't know how to take care of them. You know, you have to lance them, you have to put the moleskin on them. Sometimes you just have to listen to your feet when they say, you know what, we can't go today. You know, if you keep pushing, you end up with stress fractures, you end up with infections to the blisters. I mean, sometimes it's you have to just dial back and take care of your body.
Yeah, talk about like, I mean, that's it's such a physical task with all of the, these trails and kind of long distance hiking.
Mhm.
How does that, your body's breaking down and you're kind of building it back up? Like, how does that kind of constantly wearing and tearing and knowing when to take care of yourself and making those decisions along the trail?
You know, if it's your first time doing things, you need to learn your zone. You need to learn your limits. For myself, I mean, I became disabled when I was 23 years old. So I started learning limitations, but I put too much limitations on myself. So when I started hiking, I had to kind of figure out, where's my sweet spot? You know, if I can do 10 miles consistent, can I do 15? Can I do 20? And I had to figure out where is the place for me. But once my body starts aching or telling me, hey man, you need to take a break, I have to listen to it. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do is to just dial it back, especially when you feel like you're in a groove or you want to get to town an extra day early so you can take a half day. Sometimes you just have to, when you feel that those pains and something's abnormal, you just got to shut it down. You have to. Otherwise, you're putting the rest of your hike and possibly your health in jeopardy, and nothing's worth that.
One thing with trails like this, I don't think people really realize of the yo-yo between doing big days, and you mentioned 0 days. And Richard had asked a question, when you're on a big hike, do you ever stop and smell the roses? Do you fish? Do you sleep all day and read a book? Like,
Mhm.
how does that, as you're going months on the trail, how do you make those decisions or, kind of take time to enjoy it?
If I'm solo, if I see something cool I want to see, I just go see it. I being by myself, the miles are on just me. It's not an entire group that I want to make sure I have their input. And I know how many miles I'm capable of doing in a day and how many hours it takes me. So let's say I wake up that morning and I shoot for 25, but I get to a waterfall after 5 miles and it's just gorgeous. And I just want to chill at the waterfall for 3 or 4 hours. Well, when I'm by myself, I can do that. And then I just kind of pay the price later by hiking later or adding mileage to the next day so I can get back to where I want. But ultimately, when I'm by myself, it's flexibility. I don't go out with a time limit. I don't have a date I have to end by. I don't have a package I need to go to. Since I was saying earlier, I like to buy as I go. So it gives me the ability to be flexible. As far as fishing goes, I've only fished once or twice on trail. Usually I don't carry a pole. But when you get to lakes, you find a lot of fishing gear and lines from people who are hung up at some point and just broke the line. So I'll take a trek pole, tie a line to the end, get a hook, and I always have pepperonis in my pack. So I'll use those as bait and just sit out with the trek pole like an old school cane pole. You get a bite, you just kind of yank it back in. So, I mean, sometimes it's pretty good fun or recreation, or when I'm traveling with the trail family, if we just get to something and there's something we want to check out or a town we want to visit or whatever, even if it's not conducive with our plan or the miles we want to, we just change the plan. I mean, you have to schedule that time for you. And on a long distance hike, some of that time needs to be about something other than hiking. You're thinking about hiking in the miles all day long, it'll get to the point where it's a job, so sometimes you got to schedule this time in town to maybe just go bowling or go sightseeing, or try to play basketball and realize that you just got rid of all of your jumping muscles. The only thing you can physically do is walk, so everybody looks silly, but it's good fun. So yeah, you just alter your plans to do what you need to do for you.
So within that same vein, what have been your favorite 0 days or kind of trail magic type stuff you've encountered, in those times when, I know it obviously mentally taxing a lot of times just trying to keep the motivation and the morale up. Like, what's your favorite moments of that?
Oh man, I love going bowling with my trail families. I've done it pretty much every year. I never win. You know, Akuna, I guess, just hikes. Akuna doesn't bowl, but it's a good time. You know, it's a different part of the body. It's stimulus. It's laughs. It's everything, and I really enjoy that. You know, every now and then on these hikes, we'll take a good movie day. You know, it's one of the few ways you can get us to sit still in town. Because when you're in town, it's all about chores. You know, you're going to get that resupply from the grocery store, trying to wash clothes, maybe trying to have a nice cold adult beverage, you know, so it's constant back and forth. So you don't really get to relax. But when you go to the movie theaters, it's like, hey, you go get your Coke, get your popcorn, and you're there for 2 or 3 hours, just relaxing and enjoy yourself. And sometimes that's the most recharging we do in town, unless you're able to take what's called a Nero Zero. Nero is low miles, less than 10 in the town, and you take the rest of the day off, and then a complete day off the next day. So that Nero day, you have half the day to do all your chores, and then the next day you can kind of just hang out, you know. And that was something I really didn't like doing until, you know, maybe the second or third year of hiking. Now we'll embrace it quickly, and if I need it, I will do the rare double, triple zeros. Sometimes you just have to. I mean, it's what your mind needs, is what your body needs.
So, in that same vein, Nina asked, talk about trail magic and what's the best trail magic situation you've
Oh man,
encountered.
trail magic is just absolutely beautiful. I mean, before hiking, if you live in cities, you know, you have next door neighbors, you don't even know their names. You know, people don't say hello anymore or wave to you, let alone try to do anything nice for you. And so you start to lose kind of that faith in humanity. But when you get out on these trails, you know, something magical happens. You know, people want to be a part of you accomplishing your goals, you know, just being out there in nature and enjoying it. So there's so many times where people have left a cooler out for me with Cokes in there, with the beer in there, or sandwiches, or, you know, you come up to something and it's brownies in it. And trail magic just comes when you really need it. You know, there's a cliche and people say it all the time, the trail provides. It really does. I mean, some of your worst days ever, you're just looking down at the ground, kicking rocks around, not motivated for anything until you spot, you know, a Yeti cooler in the distance and start thinking to yourself, I'm gonna get there and it's gonna be empty. It's just gonna be other people's trash. And then you open it up and what do you see? Pepsi and gummy bears. Oh yes, for the win, you know? It's like, yes, this is, I can go 20 more miles today. Or, you know, when you come into town and you're sitting around, probably loitering in front of some gas station, because that's what thru hikers do, and trying to figure out where you're going to live for that night, you know, and trying to get all of the business, I mean, the town stuff done. And a family just pulls up to you and says, hey, are you thru hiking? Need a place to stay? Get in the car. And they bring you to their house and they feed you and they wash your nasty, dirty, stinky hiker clothes. Bless these kind souls. They feed you and they don't want anything from you except, you know, to hear about your stories and to help you along your way. And it's just, it restores, you know, everything in you, your faith in humanity. You know, you find that there's so many good people still in the world.
That's awesome. Denise asked, are you a part of any hiking community groups off the trail where you share tips, experiences, encouragement?
I constantly just use, like, say, my Instagram. You know, Instagram people will send me messages there all the time, and I'll try to answer them when I can. You know, since the pandemic started and then everything going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's been harder to answer messages. You know, I go in, I answer 30 and I have 60 new ones. So it's constantly just overcrowding. So it's easier usually to ask questions to me through my email, which is just akunahikes@gmail.com. And I actually do have a project that I'm working on right now with a couple other through hikers, people like Prodigy and Snorkel and some pretty big names in this game. And it's going to be close to that. You know, we're not ready to let it go yet. So it's just one of those, you gotta have to stay tuned and, you know, we'll let you know as soon as we're ready. Okay. Alex and Adrian both muted. I guess I'll dance a little bit. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, there they are.
A little bit of a breather there for you, right? Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to say, and we have Irene here, which is actually one of the coordinators from Loop NOLA. Obviously, huge shout out to you, Akuna, for, I mean, not only being an inspiration to all of us and the youth for Loop NOLA, but thank you again to anyone that's made a donation through Eventbrite or have gone directly to Loop NOLA's website. Obviously, there are a bunch of different ways in which you can support. So definitely check out their website if you get a moment. Obviously, there are a ton of other organizations that you can support, even locally in the Bay Area, that we have on our website through our Diversify the Outdoors program. So yeah, I mean, thank you. It's been amazing. I've learned a ton. I know everybody else has as well. We really appreciate you being here. And Alex, I guess, I don't know if you have anything that you want to close out on, or if Akuna, you want to mention anything.
You know, I think I would say this to close it out. You know, these times we're in America right now, there's some rough times. You know, people are getting sick, people are dying, people are unemployed, people are being evicted. You know, it's just a constant up and down at the yo-yo. You know, it's like we're all going through it. So anybody out there that thinks you're just, you know, going through it alone, we're all here with you. We're all going through it. We're all gonna get through it. We're all gonna send our positive energy out here. And you know, it may get worse for a while, but trust, it will get better. You just got to keep your head up, you know, and just not to let anybody steal your joy. Find it when you can, claim your small victories, and just celebrate the fact that you get another day to try to hit that small victory.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, Akuna, you know, so you spending the time and obviously being such an awesome ambassador for the Merrell brand and bringing all your love and energy out there. And, you know, kind of like you said too, is like getting out the outdoor spaces in this time is such a good mental break and a mental, you know, way to clear your head and get in a good space, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And, you know, you're a great way to inspire, you know, people to do more of that. And, you know, obviously in a big way in the way you have. So.
Man, appreciate it. It's been a great ride, man. Love my family at Merrell. Have always taken care of me, you know, never put a lot of demands on me. Just, you know, when I came to Merrell, they're just like, yeah, we just want you to just do you. It's like, that's it. It's like, yeah, it's like, I can definitely do that. Take so much pressure off of me. And I've been supported by everyone there forever. I mean, on the AT, I actually carried a picture of almost all the staff with me in Grand Rapids, because it meant a lot that, you know, I had these people in my corner that I'd never met, that could be dealing with some big name, fancy Bear Grylls type of outdoor person, but they wanted to support me. And that meant a lot then and still means a lot now. So Merrell will always be my family.
Right on. It's awesome.